So you've been an agent for 25 years. You spent time at a couple different firms representing the biggest players in the game. Now your own firm representing some of the biggest players in the game. If you had to part out the experience thus far, how would you describe that?
So when I first started, I was obviously still in college. I ended up interning at the first company that I worked for. This company represented Barry Bonds, Jose Canseco, Ricky Henderson, Kurt Schilling, Trevor Hoffman, Mike Piazza. I ended up changing my class schedule where I was in college and I said, you know, if I really have an opportunity to do this, number one, I want to get the most out of it. Because I was the same age as a lot of the players, they would utilize me to interact with the players on a daily basis. A story that comes to mind is Mike Piazza, who at the time was with the New York Mets. I had just gotten back from spring training while I was still in college, missed a handful of classes, and so ended up showing up in one of my finance classes that day. The professor immediately upon all of us sitting down says, all right, guys, put all your stuff away. We got a test. And I remember looking at him thinking, oh my gosh, I'd been gone in spring training for weeks. My phone on the desk starts to vibrate and I look at it and it's Mike Piazza. There was a moment in time where I'm thinking, okay, Mike Piazza, my teacher, Mike Piazza, my teacher, what am I doing? And I just remember feeling, given the time of the day it was, that if I don't take this call now, he's going to be in the clubhouse and I'm not going to be able to reach him for the rest of the day. For everybody who's, I guess, seen my podcast, they're probably wondering, who's this really beautiful woman that I'm sitting with here today? For anyone who is someone who knows me personally, they obviously know who this person is. This is Tara Hannaford. She is my wife.
Hello.
Her and I were talking. I actually came to her and I said, you know, you're so successful at what you do. You're so thoughtful in how you do it. Have you ever thought about maybe interviewing me on the podcast? Because I feel like for a lot of people who, whether they have questions about the agent business as a whole, questions about any sort of stuff that happens behind the scenes, I thought there's kind of no better person than you to come on and grill me, but also ask me questions that you think would be interesting for the listener. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, happy to be here. It's exciting.
I love that.
I do too. It's exciting to be able to interview you and maybe bring some perspective that is new to your listeners. Since I'm not necessarily from the industry of baseball, but I feel partially part of it. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah, we certainly do. She is
linguistically, I've gotten better at it.
Yeah, exactly. You are certainly my better half. You are somebody who I would say whose education around baseball has grown exponentially in the last 5 years, 10 years. So I think this is going to be an interesting conversation. But I also want to give you the freedom to ask whatever you would like to ask. So,
well, I wasn't doing this without that. So.
Those are the prerequisites to get you to actually take some time away and to do this. So where do you want to start?
I think it'd be fun to start at, a little foundation setting. I know that there is some great content out about your story and about how you became an agent. So if someone has not yet listened to that, we should definitely drop a link into one of those interviews to revisit it because you tell it so well. Instead of going through that, because it exists out there in the world, I'd love to ask you, though, still about some of the foundational moments. And maybe now fast forwarding to, okay, you're an agent. So you've been an agent for
25 years.
Now you spent time at a couple, different firms representing the biggest players in the game. Now your own firm representing some of the biggest players in the game. If you had to part out the experience thus far, how would you describe that? So I'm curious, now that you are an agent, how do you part that out as kind of from where you started to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for the thoughtfulness behind it. So for those who've never heard my story, if you have questions, you can certainly go back. There are plenty of episodes where I've talked about it, both on this podcast, but also on others. So when I first started, and I will weave in all of those questions. So when I first started, I was obviously still in college, right? So I was limited by the amount of hours that I had in a day. But with that, just a little tidbit of information. When I ended up interning at the first company that I worked for, This company represented Barry Bonds, Jose Canseco, Ricky Henderson, Kurt Schilling, Trevor Hoffman, Mike Piazza. I ended up changing my class schedule where I was in college and I said, if I really have an opportunity to do this, number one, I want to get the most out of it. So in order to do that, I want to actually make the classes night classes so I could work every single day during the week. And then
in the office?
Yeah. And then on the weekend, I would work, a normal restaurant job. And so the first couple years up until I graduated, I was a little hamstrung by that. But even then, what my responsibilities were was kind of a little bit of everything. I was a jack of all trades. It was essentially the four main agents at our firm, and then there are various people underneath them. But I was somebody, because I was the same age as a lot of the players, they would utilize me to interact with the players on a daily basis. So whatever was going on in a player's life, I was building relationships with them. And so they would start to call me about all these various things. And, a story that comes to mind is, Mike Piazza, who at the time was with the New York Mets. I had just gotten back from spring training while I was still in college and missed a handful of classes. And so ended up showing up in one of my finance classes that day. And the professor immediately upon all of us sitting down says, "All right, guys, put all your stuff away. We got a test." And I remember looking at him, thinking, oh my gosh, because I'd been gone in spring training for weeks, I did not know we had a test. And so inside, I'm kind of panicking a little bit, like, how am I going to do this? And immediately upon everybody starting the test, my phone on the desk starts to vibrate, and I look at it and it's Mike Piazza. And so I look at my teacher, who's now making eye contact with me because he can hear the phone vibrating. I remember there was a moment in time where I'm thinking, okay, Mike Piazza, my teacher, Mike Piazza, my teacher, what am I doing? And I just remember feeling, given the time of the day it was, that if I don't take this call now, he's going to be in the clubhouse and I'm not going to be able to reach him for the rest of the day. And so at that time, when the phone rang and it was a player, whether it was Mike Piazza status or not, I had to, I thought, I need to answer this. I'm not letting it go to voicemail. And so I immediately picked up the phone, walked outside, and my teacher is looking at me thinking, this guy is nuts. What is he doing? Because he doesn't know who's calling me, nor to him would it matter, I would think, right? So take the call. Hey, Mike, what's going on? And at that point, I feel a tap on my shoulder, and it's my teacher who looks at me and he's saying, what are you doing? And I remember thinking, and I just show him my phone, and it's Mike Piazza, obviously, and he's, kind of takes a step back, clearly is curious, why is Mike Piazza calling this person? Is that the Mike Piazza? And so he ends up going back into the classroom. I finished my call. It only lasted, a handful of minutes. And as I walk back in, I'm thinking the teacher's going to be like, come here. He's not even looking at me. So I go in, I take the test. As I'm leaving the class, he pulls me aside and he says, what are you doing? Why is Mike Piazza calling you? And I shared with him, well, I have this internship at the sports agency. We represent Mike Piazza. He was calling me because he actually needed help with his housing arrangement or whatever. And it was a moment in time that I look back on and I'm so appreciative of, because he acknowledged me and said, well, look, is this why you were gone the last couple of weeks? Because I noticed that you weren't here. And I said, yeah, I was at spring training. He goes, well, next time, just give me a heads up. This is what we want to encourage our students to do. So this is great that you're doing it. But next time, just give me a heads up. And so this is a long-winded way of me saying, that's an example of something that I was responsible for, but it went well beyond that. And that lasted a year and a half, roughly.
Would it be fair to call that you were a utility guy?
Yeah. See, there you go. That's good job, by the way.
Thanks.
Well done. So I was a utility guy. I was kind of serving in multiple different roles and ended up doing that for, a year and a half or so. And then at that point, when I graduated from college, then it was, okay, you need to go develop as an agent, right? And so from the standpoint of what did my day-to-day look like, it was a lot of the same stuff. I was still having the responsibility of all these various tasks. But then above and beyond that, it was, I need now to go out and go get my own clients. So I need to go to baseball games and recruit clients, whether that was in the major leagues, the minor leagues, or the draft. And so that stayed consistent over the next, at that point, 8.5 years.
To go out and try to recruit your own clients early on, right? When you're still understanding and developing, is there a lot of trepidation around that? Or is it I'm just so pumped to go do it?
No, there was a lot of excitement, I would say. You got to remember too, because I was 19, 20, 21 years old, I'm the same age as a lot of the guys that I'm recruiting. So it wasn't this feeling of, there were moments of intimidation, and I'll give you guys a one example. When I was recruiting draft players, because I'm roughly the same age, it was like second nature. It was like talking to buddies, right? So that didn't make me feel uneasy at all. But when I was tasked with going to recruit a player, let's just say I had to go meet him at the stadium or at a hotel, and this player is 35, right? And I'm 21. That was a little different. This player that I'm going to go approach maybe doesn't know I'm there to talk to him. And so you're in the back of your mind, you're wondering, like, what's he going to say
What's this
to
kid
this
want?
young kid? How's he going to be looking at me first off when I'm walking up to him? And so, in that regard, there was. So if you break up the time and what I was doing during those different stages. So first 1.5 years, like I said, kind of a utility role. Then when I became a full-fledged agent, at that point, it was really a matter of really showing myself, but also the people that I worked with, that not only did I enjoy doing this, not only was I good at doing this, but like I have a desire and a hunger to be great at it. And so over the next, 7-8 years, it was me essentially building my book of business. And so then at that point in 2010, I left that company, then co-founded the second company. And at that point I was, handling guys on my own.
In summation then, I mean, really, it's every bit of 10 or 12 years of like development in a way, or getting your foundation set.
Well, a lot of people think that when you get into the agent business, there's a lot of, think about the people that get into the agent business, right? You have to be aggressive. You've got to be motivated. You've got to have a lot of different talents. You're clearly intelligent. Doesn't guarantee that you're intelligent, but like the majority of people that do get in the business are on some level. And so you get this pool of people who are so hungry to prove themselves that I've had to mentor certain agents that me at the prior company, even the company before that we would hire, who are really, really ambitious kids. And I remember on various occasions having to sit them down saying, look, I know that you're motivated and I know that you're hungry, but you've got to learn this as you go. Like there is no book you're going to read and get to the end of the book and now you're ready to negotiate a multi-year contract. Like that's not how this goes. One of my biggest frustrations just in the agent business in general is people think I can say the right thing, I can read the book, I could sound like I'm a good agent, and people should want to sign with me and people should in fact sign with me, right? And I get really frustrated when I hear these stories because, any agent can tell a player what their value is, but going out and getting that from a team is a totally different thing. And that requires strategy. It requires various things. But I think anybody who is quick to take kind of that shortcut, like just give me the opportunity, let me go show you I can do it. The frustration that I have is like, well, no, because you're learning off of this player. That's not fair to the player. And so naturally, you've got to take your time and you got to crawl before you can walk. And then you got to walk before you can run. And you just have to be comfortable that we don't know how long it's going to take, but it's going to take some time. And I think that's probably something that a lot of people don't want to hear, but they need to hear it. And it's certainly something that I would hope players would want to hear, because any agent out there who's like, oh yeah, I just took my agent exam and I'm an agent, and so therefore I'm ready to represent the best player in the game. That's not how this works.
Well, it sounds like, from watching it, that a certain term comes to mind, which is nuance and nuances. And, if you're going to get into the business, it sounds like you need to come in with commitment, because it's going to take time. I think in any high-skilled profession, you have to understand the nuances that and managing those. And that is only done by experience. And experience only happens with time. So what I just heard you say confirmed, like it, you need to be good. You need to have that hunger. So there's going to be part of it. It's like tempering, right? Tempering a young gun, like tempering, how fast you can get out of the gate. You want that because it shows passion, it's excitement. You need that because this is going to require it. But just know it's going to take time, and the experience that you get is what's going to make you good if you have the goods.
So what comes to mind when you say that is Naval Ravikant, obviously, who I know you're a fan of, I'm a fan of. For anybody who doesn't know who Naval is, look him up. But I just saw a post that he made. It may have been old, but I just saw it again. And everybody's familiar with Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, right? A lot of people have heard that various times. And what's interesting is Naval's argument was it's actually, it shouldn't be 10,000 hours. It should be 10,000 iterations. And when I hear that from an agent's perspective, it almost makes me cringe, because the thing I like about the idea of 10,000 hours is it gives you this impression like, oh, this is going to take a long time. And I would rather up and coming agents know and accept my ability to be good at this is going to take a long time and I need to be patient. That is better for that agent than, oh, I just need 10,000 iterations. So let me go out and get as many players as possible and learn as quick as possible. And then I'll be ready. And it's like, well, all those guys that you just learned off of, you just ruined their careers. So that's where I push back on that.
Yeah. Or another way you could look at it is 10,000 at-bats, right? So like the iterations could actually
You're really big on the baseball lingo today. I love it.
Hey, I know what I shut up for. No, I think another way though to maybe think about that is iterations, meaning you've got to give it 10,000 tries. You got to get 10,000 at-bats. So it's not that you're going to go and have 10,000 prospective clients to try on. You just need to go try to get 10,000 clients. And after that 10,000th try, you're probably going to be ready to represent a guy, right? Or even or ready to actually recruit a real guy.
I mean, I think a lot of times people hear the 10,000 hours or 10,000 iterations or 10,000 at-bats and they think, oh, this is like linear thinking, like A plus B equals C. It's like, no, it's not a formula. You don't literally have to get 10,000. And when you get 10,000, you're like, okay, good job. You're ready to go now.
Yeah.
Right?
Or not 10,000 of the same thing. I mean, we talked about this earlier this year. I mean, similarly, I've come to a place in my business. And for those that don't know, I am in branding. I build brands in the consumer product space, identifying white space, creating brand story, and then melding that into launching something from a sales and marketing perspective, right? So storytelling and then connecting that to consumer wants and trial, et cetera. I've also been in my career now for 20 years, and I'm so comfortable for the first time. And I've been good for a while, but I'm really comfortable now. And I think that has to do with, it isn't linear, but I'm sure I've had 10,000 ways of trying something. A lot of those, some of those being good and some of those being mistakes, but it's the continual day in and day out of going in the same direction, right? Going towards the same goal. And even what we're talking about right now, right? So whether you're thinking about being an agent or you're thinking about being a player, all of that makes sense. Like you just have to take a step every day, right? You need to step to the plate. You need to get some at-bats, all the things.
So good.
In line with that, do you remember who your first big recruit was? Like notable recruit?
So I talk about this a lot because I still work with them. So Alex Zumwalt, who is the big league hitting coach with the Kansas City Royals, was the first recruit I had in the Arizona Fall League. And what's interesting, and the reason I bring him up is, so he's had a career obviously as a player in baseball, then he goes into the front office in baseball, now he's the hitting coach. But now his boys are going through travel baseball in the draft. And it's kind of this, it's a wild thing to think about. Like, wow, we've both been doing this a very long time.
Yeah.
You go through that, representing of a player, and you never really think like, oh yeah, I'm going to represent your sons one day. It's kind of a crazy thought. And so, so he's the first guy that comes to mind. Brian Wilson, who closer with the Giants, who won 2 World Series with them in 2010 and 12. Yeah. He was the first, I would say, kind of like rock star.
Like major league star.
Not major league star, I would say like rock star, right? There's a different level of, very good players statistically and like as players in the game. And then they're like, I was with him at the ESPYs when he's wearing the spandex tuxedo. I'm with him at the ESPYs when he's walking around with the Sasquatch.
Yeah, he had a notoriety outside of the game.
And so he's one that comes to mind that I oftentimes think about, which by the way, he's going to be on the podcast. I'm talking to him next week.
Do you remember how that felt though, regardless of which particular player, but when you did have your first recruit, like your guy, do you remember that at all?
Yeah.
Was that a notable moment, or was it so fast moving that, like, is that something that you celebrate, or is it like, good, keep going?
So I will tell you what, and I believe this is it's a great response that I had in the moment, but the word that comes to mind, and I don't remember if like took a moment and was like, oh, I'm gonna sit with this. I don't remember that.
Or did you call your parents?
I'm sure I did. I don't remember that. But the feeling that I had, I do remember. And that was, it's what I imagine parents on some level when they go home with their kid, like, I'm responsible for this thing. And so I felt really responsible that an individual is putting his career, so to speak, in my hands. And what he's doing is he's essentially saying, like, I'm trusting you and we're in this together. And I think every agent or soon to be agent needs to understand and grasp that, because it's a responsibility. It's not to be taken lightly. And I think that's where I take things so personally, to a fault at times, where, I mean, when my clients are having bad seasons or bad year or bad days or bad weeks, or even in their personal life, like, I wear it. It doesn't feel good. You know, these are people that are, I know this term gets thrown around a lot. Oh, they're family. But like, the investment emotionally is as a family member. So imagine if your mom or dad or brother is going through a hard time, like, this isn't anything you're just like, oh yeah, that's not my life, I don't have to worry about it. That's not happening at all. I mean, it's truly something that you're wearing it like clothes. So the responsibilities, like, that's the word that comes to mind when you ask that question.
That was a very clear feeling early on. Can you think of a specific time in your life prior to going down your professional pursuit that prepared you for it? Like, is there anything in particular?
Absolutely. There's something that comes to mind immediately. My dad's going to love this. My dad, you obviously know, is somebody who is very, very hard workers. You know, my dad, as an example, had to work his grandfather's farm for like an entire summers. So for me, what it was is we obviously had kind of like the normal chores. And then when I was, I think 11, 12, 13, I'm obviously playing sports, various sports. And 7th, 8th grade, I was in year-round school up in Sacramento. And so what that means for anybody who doesn't know is, like, you're not on the normal track where you have like a summer. It's, you go to school for, I think it was like 4 months, and then you have a month off, or 3 months and have a month off, and then another 3 months and then a month off. Yeah. Okay. So for me, I think my months off were like January, April.
Oh, what a crappy month to have off.
No, it's crazy. So you got to pick like which one you wanted. That was the one I picked, and you line it up with your buddies. Like, which one are you taking? Like, I'll do the same. Well, so my dad would say to me, hey, I know you have the month off, but you have to paint the house. So you're not going to do anything until you finish painting the house for, 5 hours in the morning. And then when you're done, then you can go do whatever else you want to do with your buddies. And so that...
Paint the house.
What I got to experience was the feeling that you get when you accomplish a task well, right? So what starts to happen to anybody, and this is why, God willing, we're able to have children. Like, I will instill that in our kids, where I'm going to want them to not like, slave away and paint the house, but go do this, because I want them to learn, when you achieve the task and you see it through, the feeling that you're going to get, at least what I got, was like, yes, victory. Mm-hmm. Like, that felt great. I felt accomplished. And I took that into baseball. I took that into hockey when I was playing hockey. I took that into this career. So when I got into the business, I remember the gentleman that brought me on, he tells me, he's like, hey, I'm going to bring you on for an internship. We're not hiring. So do this for 3 months. And then, by the way, we'll see you later. And I like never left. And my thought the whole time was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I am going to work so hard that you're literally going to be able to, you're not going to be able to say, like, this kid, like, there's nothing he won't do, right? I wanted to be the first one in the office, the last one to leave. I mean, I was giving them every reason to think I'm crazy.
They're not going to want to cut you loose.
Yeah, but like, to this day, it's not that I'm trying to do it. It's literally who I am. I learned that by painting the house.
So how many years did your dad make you do those things? Was it?
I did it twice. I don't remember how many years. Various chores like that. Yeah. It was like, oh yeah, you're going to clean the gutters. You're going to reorganize the entire garage. And so I took literally everything out of a garage and then essentially decorated, but put everything, and then wrote on little like stickies, like what's in this like cupboard and drawer.
So is that why you don't like to do that now at our house?
Absolutely.
He got all of it out of you. Oh, that's great. No, so it set you up to just be able, talking about something that requires repetition that we just finished discussing, like that would be a skill set that would make you say, hey, I can show up and do this every day.
Well, I think there's a value that you get that you don't even see at that age. When you're doing it at 11, it's the last thing you want to do. It's the worst, right? All you're thinking about is, I want to go hang out. Like my buddies don't have to do this. And so the act of doing it isn't fun. It's not, by the way, my dad wasn't telling me, you're going to thank me one day like that. He wasn't saying, so that wasn't even in the picture. But reflecting back on it now, like there is a value that anybody gets when they're forced to do something they don't want to do. And then they figure out this is a part of life. I'm good at it. I actually now enjoy the hard work, right? I can apply this to other things.
You really hone the reward system too. Like, it feels good when it's done.
Yeah. But I do think there were life lessons in that. And that's the reason he was having me do it, that I knew probably would kind of come into play one day. I did not realize they would come into play at that extent that early. Yeah. I kind of took it like, oh yeah, one day I'm going to have my own house and I'm going to have to do this stuff, was how I thought about it. But it was much, much different.
I'm sure he will love to hear that.
Yeah.
I think any parent enjoys hearing how they've impressed upon their children in ways.
I've told him.
What is a mistake, right? So that's something that a way in your life that one of your parents influenced, a work ethic and an approach for the rest of your life that you still carry today. So what's something that you see families or young players, we'll call it maybe a misstep or a mistake that you see families or young players make early that costs them down the line?
So I think what happens is, we were talking about linear thinking earlier, right? Like A plus B equals C. And I think what comes to mind for me, not I think what comes to mind, is parents who approach their son's baseball career and experience as they're younger. And they basically want to outsource all of the heavy lifting. So, and I get like on this podcast, I get comments from parents all the time saying, what should we do? What team should we join? I just answered one the other day from a parent who was basically asking me, or telling me rather, my son is, not to brag, but he takes this really seriously, and the other kids that he's playing with don't take it quite as serious, and they're not quite as good. Should we change teams? And so they just want, like, tell us what to do. And so I think one of the mistakes is they outsource their agency. And what they need to realize is what I'm giving them is advice, right? Now, what I give to my players when I represent them is at a much deeper level. I do know various things about their lives, so I can give them a different level of advice. But to a lot of families, I think they just want to be told, whether it's from a coach, a scout, a college recruiting coordinator, an advisor, just tell us what to do. And then we're going to do it, and it's going to work out. And so what happens, and the mistake that I think is being made, is it's not that it's lazy thinking, it's that it's never going to work out quite like you're hoping, because the advice is only as good as it's being put through your filter to make the decision.
So play out this example we just talked about. You have a listener sends you a request. My son, is performing at a better level than his teammates, takes it more seriously. Should we switch the team? What was your answer?
My first question was, well, how old's your son?
I was going to ask that. Right? How old is he?
Yeah. I think he was 14. What are your goals, right? Is he still learning? If he's still learning, okay, he's 14. He doesn't have to do anything right now. If he's not learning and he's not having fun, well then, yeah, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and search for another team, because then you're just wasting time and money, right? And that doesn't really make any sense. And so I think what parents should at least start with is, well, what's the experience like for my son, right? Yeah. Not, what do we need to do so that he can one day get his college scholarship or get drafted? Like, if he's 14, we're not even going to know if that's even possible for a couple of years. But the most important thing, I think, for these parents is just to realize, first and foremost, you are the solution. It's you. So don't look out there for someone to give you some like magic potion that's going to work. There are things that people can tell you that's going to help, but it's only going to be based on you thinking about the advice and saying, let's think through those things. And so I'm not blaming parents. I'm not saying that they've made mistakes, because at the end of the day, and let's be real, the parents all have full-time jobs, right? They're full-time parents. And then they
Probably
throw
other
this,
kids.
yeah, then they throw this travel baseball thing on top of it. And it's like, I don't have time to do this. So like, tell me what to do. I'm just going to do it and it's going to work, right? Yeah, it's going to, okay, that's all I needed. And again, and the reason for this podcast on some level is to help them understand this stuff, because what I want, as much as it makes me feel good for a parent to call me on the phone and say, you're the reason why we had all this success. Like, let's be real. I want informed parents to encourage them information to help make better decisions. Like, they're informed, we've won. And so I think there are a lot of people out there that would rather have them be told, oh, you're the greatest. That's not what I'm doing this for.
One of the things that I take away from listening to the show and listening to your engagements and interactions is it seems like parents have a lot more time than they think. With this example of, let's say, a 14-year-old, there's a lot of time left. It seems like if the focus is always college or pro, is there some sort of truth in that, hey, these families have a lot more time than they think? There's a lot more time for development. There's a lot more time for play.
They have more time to make decisions about things that are going to impact their son's career, and they don't need to be in such a rush. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, if they think the timeline is short, every decision is so heavy. But it's like, no, he's 14. You've got a lot of time.
And it's funny, I've actually had a major league player commented, who I didn't represent, who I don't even know, commented on this. And I'd like to call this out because like I'm not big enough where like people won't criticize some of the stuff that I say. This is my belief, right? But I said, you can't possibly know how good your son's going to be until like 15, 16 years old. From my experience, that's the reality, right? And part of the reason why for that, and again, I just responded to a parent the other day about this exact thing. Part of the reason I say that it's 15, 16 is because the kid has to hit puberty and like fully mature. When a kid is 14 years old, he's going through it, but he's not done with it yet. And so we don't know how big he's going to be, how fast he's going to be. Exactly. So for a parent to see a kid, let's just say who's 5'8" at 14, and maybe he's not the strongest, he's still growing into his body, he's not the fastest, and they're like, we've got to hurry up and do something because this isn't going to get it done. At 16, he could look vastly different. And it's not because he went to a better coach. It's not because he went to a speed guy. It's because he hit puberty and
played
grew.
on a different team.
Yeah. And so that's where I'm saying to parents, like, give it time. Isn't because I'm saying, you're overreacting. Don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. It's you've got to give the kid time to mature and fully grow. And I mean, look, there are plenty of kids who, 13, 14 years old.
That's young.
They were tiny.
Yeah.
And then they get to 16 and they're like 6'4", and you're just like, oh, well, this is a different thing. And so forcing that kid at 13, 14 to go do all this crazy stuff because you think he's behind, all that could potentially do is risk him getting burnt out. And then by 16, he's like, I don't even want to play. The player who reached out to me in a comment and was like, yeah, I disagree. All good. Like in his experience, maybe to him, maybe he has a son.
Yeah.
And to him, like his son at 15 or 13 or 14, he's like, my son's going to be a big leaguer. He knows. Okay, that's fine. But that's not the majority of kids.
Well, there's exceptions to every rule. And, there are some people that are just born with outstanding abilities. I mean, Tiger Woods being one of them, right? I'm sure Kobe Bryant from a very, very young age was showing incredible skills as a basketball player. And I'm sure we can name some baseball players too, but those are the exception.
Right, that's not the rule.
It's not the rule.
Right.
So yes, I would agree that there's probably some people that do display those talents early on, but I can also see, especially for young men, like women develop a lot earlier, right? So like men, it happens a little later. So that makes sense to me. You get a lot of questions and you discuss a lot about the draft. And I find the draft to be fascinating because there's not a lot of predictability around it, even when you are an expert. I'm sure people would love to know, like, if it was your son, right? If it was our son going through the draft tomorrow, how would you handle it? And that may be too abstract of a question because it would depend on how he's playing or.
What I am doing and like who I'm embodying as I'm representing players is I am doing everything that I would be doing if my son were sitting next to me and he was the one that I was representing. And I think everybody should do that. And maybe they do. But that is the level of care that I believe you have to have doing this. And it's one of my critiques for any agency that has a ton of players in the draft, because I think you couldn't parent 40 kids. How can you represent 40 guys out of the draft? I think that's not in the best interest of the families. And that's not to say anything wrong for any of the agencies that do, like they have a different belief system. Totally fine.
Or multiple agents.
I mean, it goes into a bigger point about what constitutes valuable agents.
Ultimately, you're just saying that the way that you guide clients, and I know that to be true because I see the level of care that you exert when dealing with families and dealing directly with players. You care deeply, you think holistically, and it's very meaningful. So
what just came to mind, and this hopefully is funny for everybody. You know how you see presidents like before they go into office and then after they go into office?
Mm-hmm.
People oftentimes are like, why do you have so much gray hair? And I'm like, when you go through this business and like you actually do care, and this is a joke kind of, but like, no, you emotionally wear, like it bums me out when a player wants to sign out of high school and the circumstances don't go his way and he ends up going to college and he's like bummed out. Now, there are things that I do to prepare him for that in advance. So it's not like, what just happened? But I see that like, oh yeah, he would have chosen to sign had he got his number. I wish he would have gotten his number, right? Yeah. And so you carry that as you represent them, you know, like a parent would or like an uncle would.
Yeah.
And so that's why I have gray hair.
At least it's not my fault. So I'll take that. I will be curious, though, as being an agent for 25 years, what does success look like to you today? Success as an agent versus maybe what it looked like 10 years ago.
The thing that comes to mind is, and I'll give a shout out to our friend Jason Jaggard for this.
I love Jason.
Because I learned this as I was coaching with him. So he, and maybe you've seen this too. So like a pyramid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what he called it, but basically at the very bottom of the pyramid, I think we called it like the high performance pyramid or something like that. So the very bottom of the pyramid is somebody, and let's just say in this question, it's an agent who says, I want to do the least amount of work and not get fired, right? And above that is what Jason calls like the Applebee's of high performance, which is, I want to do a good job, right? And then above that is a high performer who says, I want to be the best, right? And like that is a pyramid that I think a lot of people would agree with. Like, yeah. And the majority of people would say, well, I'm a high performer. And I think people in the agent business, if you're even in it, on some level, like you are a high performer. You view yourself as a high performer. But what I learned, and this is like maybe who I was, and it probably longer than 10 years ago, I'd say it's more like 15 years ago, was I was a high performer. And when you understand high performers, there are limitations to being a high performer, right? High performers oftentimes are closed-minded. They're people that think they're great. And ultimately what ends up happening is they're closed off to ideas of how they can improve, right?
Unteachable.
So, that's right. So
coachable, yep.
Exactly. So someone comes in and says, hey man, love what you're doing. Have you ever thought about this? And the high performer's like, I got it. I don't need this. I got this. You don't need to tell me what to do. And they get really territorial and sensitive around all that stuff. I would put the first 10 years of my career in that box.
Okay.
Because I didn't understand there was another level. And the other level that I'm talking about is someone who asks a totally different question. Not, how can I be the best? But I'm wondering how good I could possibly be. Right? What more is there?
Yeah.
And again, like this podcast is a direct response to that. The most valuable agent isn't me calling myself the most valuable agent. The Most Valuable Agent podcast is literally my vision for the company that I have, which is I want to be the most valuable agency that's ever existed. And when you start to live by this ethos, what it does is it starts, you're now asking yourself different questions about what's possible for your clients. So for me, it was, well, if I wanted to be the most valuable agency that's ever existed, well, I wonder how I would handle this situation. I wonder what more there is for me to do for these guys above and beyond just being a high performer, right? And so it truly makes you realize, oh, wait a second. I was limited by my inability to have vision. And so that is, what does success look like for me? It's continually pushing that higher and higher and higher. And what's crazy is what you realize is there actually is no limit.
Yeah.
You'll do something great and then it's, where's the next level? And so people may hear that and think, oh, that's unfortunate, right? Like you're never satisfied. It's not a matter of being satisfied. It's a matter of, because again, I am not the goal of the success. My clients are the goal of the success. So how do I continue to be even more valuable to them at the next level, and then at the next level, and then at the next level? And it literally is never ending.
Is it fair to say that if the goal is service, then you can never be done?
Yeah.
Right? So if to someone who might think, oh, well, that's sad because you're always chasing. I would actually say, as someone that spends life with you every day, I would say that you're very, like right now, currently in this season and recently, like you're very satisfied, but you're never idle. So you're very satisfied, but you're not idle because you feel purpose.
Yeah.
So and I think of service as a purpose.
Yeah.
And I think the Most Valuable Agent podcast is an extension of service, right? Because I mean, in a lot of ways, like the podcast isn't serving, there's you as the agent, right? And the clients in the major league that you're serving, right? Or in that step. And then, now you've got another audience here with the Most Valuable Agent that are working their way up, right? To making baseball a career. And so they are separate, but yet it feels like being in service is just like adding fuel to purpose, if that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So what I'm experiencing as you say this is I think about my parents, right? My dad was in service. My mom was a teacher.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, oh, right. The agent side being good at it came from my father. The podcast side and the care factor, right, came from my mother.
I never thought about that. Yeah. That's funny.
I didn't either until you just said that. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. Yeah.
Look at that.
Bob and Ange.
They're saints. For anyone that doesn't know them, they are saints. I'm very lucky to have them as in-laws. Let's talk about the podcast then for a little bit, because it is something that takes, like, your day is very full as an agent and running a line sports agency. You, quite frankly, don't have extra time. And yet you said, I'm going to jump in with both feet. What you talked about for a long time was reaching parents and reaching amateur players and recognizing that they just weren't getting any guidance because they don't get the attention, at that level, and wanting to share some of the knowledge, wanting to share the experience. So that was obviously something that you were mindful of for a long time. It then manifested into, okay, what's a way to reach people to do that? The podcast was born, and you're finding time to make it happen. You're finding time to make it happen every week. What has surprised you about that? Like, what have you been surprised by? Has it been more or less what you expected? Has it given you more than you thought from like a fulfillment standpoint? Has it been more work than you thought? Like, what are just some things now that I think we're like a year and a half in on the podcast? Is that a year and a half? 16, 18 months into this ride, which is now the most valuable agent. What are ways that it fills you and what are ways that it surprises you? And what are you continuing to look forward to do through it?
Yeah, I think, and there's so many different things that come to mind. It's the people that I've been able to meet that have been listeners who have messaged me. And hearing their experience and seeing that it's making an impact is the most amazing thing in the world, right? It just reinforces, because you're right. I mean, I am an agent and that does take a lot of time and energy and
ton of time.
Right. And so you get to a place, and I hope everybody knows this, like it couldn't be fake because you literally couldn't muscle your way through doing both. And so what I'm doing is I'm basically like, things are happening every day in the agent space and they're giving me ideas of like, oh, yeah, like everybody needs to know this.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to experience this and understand that these things exist. And so they blend really well together. So it's not a heavy lift in the extent that like I'm doing something that, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to do this. It's fulfilling in the regard that like I am blessed, so I get to help bless others is how I look at it. So that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, actually, big news in the agency world this week. But agencies doing different things, growing, right? New ones starting. I feel like right now too, it's funny talking about the arc of your career so far. Like when you started 25 years ago, there weren't that many agents.
Well, there weren't compared to today. Correct.
That's the point I'm getting to. It's like when you started, there were like, a couple big players in the agent or agency space. So we'll say, and I'm talking specific to baseball. And now there's a lot more. So one of the changes that we can say over the last 2 decades is just like sheer, volume or amount of agents on the scene. But like, what do you see? And I know that you've seen the agency business changing for a while. Like, how do you continue to see that morph in the future? Or how do you think about maybe not even so much the agency as a business, but how do you see player representation
kind of changing,
if at all, in the future?
I guess the thing that I think will continue to happen, and this isn't necessarily only the agency business. I think it's just kind of a lot of businesses as we get into what I've found to be people's ability to communicate with the source a lot more. Where I think a lot of times, the audience or in the agency case, like the players, getting to connect with the source of information has never been easier than it is today. But I think if I had to, give you kind of like a timeline or a quick glimpse into the future, what I would say is I think the agencies, like, it's no different than in baseball. And I know I'm kind of all over the place. So let me kind of summarize my thoughts and then I'll narrow it down. So in baseball, right, pre-technology, pre-data, it was the front offices were filled with baseball guys, right? Ex-players became GMs. Ex-players obviously are managers, and everybody was just an ex-player, right? And there was no data. And then with the advent of data, now we've swung the pendulum kind of almost in the opposite direction, where the things that are making decisions for lineups are not people, right? Oftentimes they are data-driven, right? And I think in baseball, we're starting to kind of get back to a place where it is going back a little bit to the center. I think we have a long way to go till it kind of like blends both pretty well. And so I think the agency business is no different. I think what agencies are now doing is they're trying to grow and be these massive companies that do a whole host of things, right? You see agencies that don't just represent players, but they represent brands, and they're negotiating these deals with Pepsi and Coke, and they're negotiating for FIFA, and like they're brokering deals that are massive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the heart of it, it's always going to come back to like, what is the role of the agent? The role of the agent is to literally guide that player and to be their mouthpiece and to truly add value to their career, right? If you just fundamentally look at it. And so I think the future of the business is just that is going to continue staying important, but that is going to become even more important because all these other firms that continue to grow and get massive are going to lose that.
Mm-hmm.
Not because they want to, but because that's the byproduct of getting massive and doing all that is the personal relationship goes away. That to me it's doing a disservice to the players. I think there's a lot of good that could come from brokering those big deals and doing that stuff. But I think at the end of the day, you've got to be so committed to the player that oftentimes in experience, what I've seen is, oh yeah, they'll tell you they're committed to you. But in reality, just it's pure logic. Money drives decisions oftentimes in the agent world. Like I've talked about that. So if they're getting a commission for $1 billion deal versus your $5 million deal, where do you think they're going to devote most time? Probably to the $1 billion deal. They could be great guys, but the incentives are driving that behavior. So how do you set up a company to where like those incentives don't exist quite like that? I don't know how they're doing that in that space.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's hard to manage that because you do make a commitment. You make a commitment to your clients and you need to honor that and you need to show up for that and be wholly present and represent that to the best of your ability.
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like I can't give credit where credit is due. There are a lot of agencies out there that do a lot of good work, right?
Yeah,
but
of course.
If, you asked me a question about where in the future do I think the agency business is going? And I do. I see it very, very clearly that agencies are going to continue to be driven by this business obsessive money machine, which, okay, I understand like the agent business is filled with those people, but there is a natural downside to having that belief system that I don't care how disciplined you are is going to show at some point.
Yeah.
It will. And I trust the audience, I trust parents, and I trust players. They're going to be smart enough. So I'm educating them. Right? At the end of the day, I want these guys to make good decisions, smart decisions, whatever decision they think is the right decision for them, just with information that's actually valuable.
Yeah. So, they can do it with the right information.
Yeah.
And in that, you answered my last question, which is what in fact makes, an agent valuable, makes an agent a true advocate. And you just answered that. It's truly being vested and maintaining that high care for every client across the board, no matter what kind of deal that they're doing, but knowing what they want, making sure they're informed, that everybody across the board's informed.
I actually want to add to that because here is something that I do think is interesting is when you sit down with a player and a family, right? And let's just say they're either interviewing agencies or they have an agent. The reality is I think a lot of times parents and players don't really know how to define what a good agent is. Right? They think a good agent is someone who negotiates the biggest contracts, right? That's an element of it. A good agent is someone who has the most clients, right? I would totally disagree, but like I understand how they could come to that conclusion. But I think what makes a good agent, you have to be good at three components like equally well, right? There's like the moral component, which is like, are you a man of integrity? Are you trustworthy?
Yep. Of course. That's the base.
Well, what's interesting is like trustworthy is different than you saying, I trust my agent. And I don't know if you follow that, but like being someone who's trustworthy is someone who is honest, not just here, but out there. Right. And so let's just say
outside of our interaction.
Yeah. Like you trust your agent. Well, that doesn't mean that he's being honest with you. You just trust them. That's like your feeling.
It's
right?
No different than a marriage.
Right. So being we're going to call it morally good, right, is one component. But you have to be really, really good at that to be a good agent, right? I guess the next one is like functionally good, right? So that's like, do you have expertise in the industry? Are you seasoned? Do you have experience? Are you somebody who is educated in it? right?
Do you have the relationships?
That's right. Like, can you do the job?
Yep.
Right? Can you do the job as an agent? And you've got to be great at that. Okay. So morally good, functionally good. And then the third component is like relationally good, right? You have to be able to know your client and build a relationship with your client on such a level that when you're negotiating his contract, you're not doing it for what's best for you in that negotiation. You're doing it so that he meets his needs.
Mm-hmm.
He has said, I want to stay with this organization. So your job, despite the fact that you may think it's to get him the most amount of money, wherever, is actually to get him the most amount of money here.
Yep.
If that's what he is hiring you to do, right? Like,
yeah.
So you can't do that unless you are invested in the relationship. And so what I think the mistake that's being made is you can be morally good and that's it and be a terrible agent.
Yeah. You're not a bad guy.
Right.
But you're not
You're a great guy,
good.
But you're not functionally good.
Right.
You could be morally bad and functionally the most amazing person ever. You're a terrible agent.
Mm-hmm.
Because your job is to literally be honest. If anything, it's to be honest with your client, right? It's to be honest in your dealings.
Mm-hmm.
If you're manipulating your client and lying to your client, you may have done a phenomenal contract. You're a terrible agent. You could be amazing morally, amazing functionally, and have absolutely no relationship with your client. And I am telling you right now, you're not a good agent. You have to be great at all three.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and we weren't just saying a good agent. That's what we're saying. Like, how do you are the best, how
well,
to become
I did say good agent, but like.
The best agent.
Yeah.
No, I thought that was just going to be something good to really define because I think some people would say, well, if you're functionally a really good agent and you're doing great contracts, maybe I don't care if you're a great guy. It doesn't matter because you're getting us our money.
It happens all the time.
So in your premise though, but perhaps what people don't see though is like maybe there was something on the table they don't know because if you're not trustworthy in the world, then maybe the team's not trusting you and doing the dealings.
Yeah.
Like it's only as good of a contract that you know it could be. So I think that's an important call out is like when you look at who's representing you or who's representing your child is you can use those 3 guidelines and know that they're important and know that even if there's an outcome from it, it may not be the best outcome if your agent has a deficit.
Sure.
In 3 of those.
Well, remember, you asked me the question earlier, like what's a mistake that is being made that you see players or parents making? And by outsourcing the agency and thinking the solution is out there, they do that with the agent decision too. And so it's like, okay, well, I know that he represents a bunch of good players and I know that people know who he is. So I'm just going to choose him.
Mm-hmm.
And not because they think he's perfect for them, but like, I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
I just don't want to worry about it. And it's not that, and I want to make myself clear. I'm not saying that agent may not be good. What I'm saying is for you to understand, this is where you're the solution again. Mm-hmm. For you to understand who's the right agent for you, you've got to lift the weight. You're not going to get massive in the gym by watching a YouTube video. You actually have to be the one that lifts the weight, right? And the same applies for all of this. And what's interesting is I think people hear that and probably think that sounds like more work.
Yes.
No, just like the gym. It's like you may be miserable today, amazing tomorrow, best life tomorrow. But would you rather feel comfortable today and a miserable life tomorrow? Because that's the other way this goes. I'm going to choose this agent that like, I don't want to think about it. He's my guy. Okay. And then you find out that you turn down a deal in the news and you're like, wait a second. I didn't even get the chance to say yes or no to that. Right? Or you find out years later that, oh, wait, yeah, that team offered you and you never even got the phone call from your agent because it was his decision on what you should do. Like those things happen.
Yeah.
And if you're choosing to be represented by that agent and you know that that's a risk, good for you. That is totally fine. That is your right. It's not my decision. I'm not saying I'm the only one that's good.
Right. No.
It's you have to understand how you're valuing and how you're evaluating what you want and then see it clearly and say, that's who I'm choosing to meet my needs and feel really good about it. And that's all you can do. Yeah. So they'll never blame me for it.
Well, this was fun.
We're done?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. This was fun, right?
It was fun.
Good. You want to keep going?
I just wanted to like hold back a little bit so people don't keep asking me to be on the show.